Hey, Krystal. I've been looking forward to this because we have our special guest coworker, Tracie, who does actually work with us. And she's the one who brought us this episode, or this case, I should say. And once we started looking into it, we couldn't let it go.
Yeah, I know you and Tracie go way back. And I've only been blessed over the last couple of years to get closer to Tracie, and she's hilarious. And we've kind of like vamped her up the last several episodes. Tracie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Your orientation has officially begun.
So, yeah, I've worked with Rachel for 20 plus years, and we're friends outside of work. And then I got to know you, Krystal, through work, but we're friends outside of work. I live in the Southeast, and I have 3 dogs, no kids. I like to travel, I like music, and I like true crime, which is kind of weird.
I want to just make note that one of your dog's name always makes me want to
Oh,
eat.
well, I have 3, and I have to explain. I have pugs because those are the best dogs. So I have a pug named Stacy, and she's named after Stacy from Vanderpump Rules because she was my favorite on there. And then her brother, his name is Jax, but it's all capital, like Sons of Anarchy Jax, not the bad Jax
Uh-huh.
that was on Vanderpump. And then I have a white pug, which is kind of a rare pug, and his name is Queso because it's just
Yeah.
fitting that you would name a white dog Queso.
Yeah. You're like, oh, queso has this today. And I'm like, I should have queso. You're right.
Queso,
I
yes. Well, I know somebody said, like, your next dog, you should get like a fawn one and name it Chip. And I was like,
Chip and queso. That's awesome. Oh, and you also say you like music, but you're actually obsessed with music.
I am not obsessed. I am a dedicated fan. There's a huge
Right,
difference.
that's
So
fair.
I have,
There is a huge
yes.
difference.
So, yeah, so I've been a dedicated fan of the Backstreet Boys for 30 plus years. I have seen them 67 times, which is a lot, I guess, but that's what I choose to spend my money on, pugs and Backstreet Boys.
We need more people like you, really.
So, we should say that this is, as you like to refer to her, Krystal, as Mean Case Tracie,
Right.
because we
Yeah.
mention her a lot. So this is her. This is the one
The
that brought us
Tracie.
the Tracie that brought us that case that neither one of us could sleep for days, weeks afterwards.
And this
So
is
with
not
that
that
in
case.
mind, this is not that case. Yeah, this is not that case. With that in mind, what hooked you on this case or just true crime in general?
So I like a good whodunit or like a good puzzle, but this is kind of weird. But back when I was in 4th grade, I know, 4th grade, one of my classmates, his dad was a crime writer. And so he would always talk about cases his dad was working on. I grew up in South Carolina. There was a very famous case down there, and his dad interviewed this Pee Wee Gaskins is his name. He was convicted. And his dad went and interviewed him all the time, and he was just very fascinating. And, like, I know it sounds weird for a 4th grader to be fascinated, but it just that this person could do these horrible things, but then was very empathetic in other ways. Like, he broke into his niece's house and killed her and her roommate, and
Wow.
took the roommate and, like, cut her up and proceeded to flush her, and then took the niece to the family grave plot. And then when they asked him, "Why did you do this?" He was like, "Oh, because she's family. Like, I couldn't, it didn't matter that you killed her. It was like, but in the end, she was my family, so I have to, like, I don't know. It was just that got me into it, and it was just I always wanna know why things happen the way that they
Yeah.
and I think this case that we're talking about today, I think one of the things that hooked me into it was, one, that these were, young people, and there's so many pieces that don't make sense, and I don't like the fact that it's not solved. Like, I
Yeah.
like when it's all wrapped up.
Yeah. Our unsolved episodes, we even had like a really deep conversation about one of them that does, if someone just takes a plea, you never get to hear the why. And does that
Right.
really matter? And it does. I think it
It
really
does.
matters.
Well, you think in your mind, like, if this person can give you a reason, which 9 times out of 10, there's not a reason that's gonna make sense to the average sane person, but at least you can think, "Okay, well, now we can look for these clues in somebody else before this happens again," but I just don't think that you ever really can.
Mhm. Well, and I was my next question was gonna be why you brought this case in particular, and I think you said it. Young people, and it's still no one's been held accountable is a pretty damn good answer. Well, you're leading us today. Rachel
Oh,
and
great.
I just somewhat, don't be too worried about it. But you're gonna kinda lead us through, and Rachel and I are gonna jump in with questions. Rachel, you wanna kick us off with this?
All right, Tracy, take us back to Speedway, Indiana, November 1978. Hey, coworkers.
Welcome to Coworkers in Crime, the podcast where office chatter meets crime discussion.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Krystal.
Yes, we really do work together.
And yes, we're totally obsessed with true crime.
From water cooler whispers to cold case deep dives.
We're here to bring you stories that keep us chatting way past our coffee breaks.
So grab your coffee.
Lock your desk drawer, and let's get into this week's case.
So I've watched racing. I live in, an area where NASCAR's huge, but like I never knew that the town was actually called Speedway. So I'm thinking in my mind, oh, this is going to be like some way out, but no, it's like where the racing happens. So like it's still a small town, but like it was busy that one time of the year, and then the rest of the year it's just a small town. But I mean, this was Burger Chef is what it was called, and it's basically a spinoff of like a McDonald's or a Hardee's, but it was big in Indiana. It was a huge, everybody went there. They had the first Happy Meals with prizes. Yeah. First Happy Meals with prizes. They basically advertised 2 kids to work there because it would work around your school schedule, it'd work around your sports schedule. So most of the employees were kids in high school. Some, stayed on after that.
When you first sent this, I was like, Burger Chef murder. I feel like I had no idea that name of the case kind of threw me off, but I saw that they sold off after a while. They really knocked down their number of locations after this, and then they sold to, I don't think it was Hardee's still, not Carl's
It was
Jr., but they
Hardee's.
sold the rest of
Yeah.
them to Hardee's.
The location where the murders happened never got, it's like people stopped going there. Like they just stopped. They would go to other locations in town but they wouldn't go back to that location. So they ended up closing that location, and it was bought by Hardee's, but now it's not even, it's abandoned now. Yeah, so Jane is 20. She's the manager. She had worked at Burger Chef and then worked her way up to be the manager. Ruth, she was 17, like a month from being 18. 2 boys were both 16. And so the youngest boy, Danny, he actually had to call home that night to get permission from his mom to stay late to close for the night. But there was a female that was supposed to be working that night, and Mark was covering for her and was supposed to meet a buddy of his to walk home after they closed.
You know them so well. You know this case so incredibly well.
She does.
It's pretty insane.
Like it's and I know I'm jumping ahead and you can edit this any way you want to, but like I feel like the people that committed this crime, I feel like I don't want to say cased the place, but I feel like they cased the place. And they knew that 3 young girls were going to be working with a young, non-athletic, big guy. And I feel like they thought, well, we can just go in there and we can overpower these people. And they weren't expecting Mark, the other guy, to be there because he was athletic, he was tall, he was, built. Like, I think that threw a wrench in their plan.
Yeah.
So what's the one detail you always lead with when you tell someone about this case?
I guess it's the fact that, like, they did have 2 suspects that were really good suspects. Like, they had a really good reason to suspect those people. And one guy would not answer any questions, and the other guy disappeared soon after the crime and has never been seen or heard from again. So why? Like, where is he? And the same guy that disappeared, his girlfriend was found 7 months later dead in an oil barrel in a lake, in a stream, I'm sorry.
Dang.
Did you not know that one?
No, I didn't. I did
Yeah.
see some, and I think we go in a little bit to it later of who actually ended up taking some accountability, and we'll get to him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the one I knew the most about, and probably because, like you said, they kind of just let's ignore this person. So almost like look away kind of feel.
Yeah, so the 2 main suspects, they were known to be pretty heavy into drugs, and one guy was like an enforcer. Like he's described as very large, very mean, and had, gotten into a lot of trouble in town, and they were supposedly seen outside of the Burger Chef that night. And the Jane, the oldest, the 20-year-old, her brother was a known drug dealer in town, and it was suspected that maybe her brother owed money or she owed money. to
Mhm.
these people, and maybe they went there to collect the money or to do something to her to get their brother
Yeah, to
to pay
scare
the
her,
money.
so the brother yeah, I saw that.
Right, another gentleman, he actually saw the 2 suspects outside of the Burger Chef. He actually confronted them, and the one guy who's been missing for 40 something years, his girlfriend was in the van, and she said, "Get out of here, they're gonna kill me." She disappeared and then was found 7 months later in a oil drum.
So if you had to describe the case itself, like what happened that night, I'll never know it as well as you. I mean, I can tell this is one you're really. I feel like this is how I am about Karen Reed and the
Yeah,
Idaho Four. I am
yeah.
latched in. I know so much. I can tell you everyone who they even thought might have been. But when it comes to this one, so that night, I had to go through like three different sources that seemed reliable to paint a picture of what happened that night.
So the girl who was supposed to work that night, she was asked out on a date by another Burger Chef employee, and she got Mark to one of the victims to cover her shift. When she and her date were driving past the Burger Chef around like 11:30, 11:45 on their way home, they noticed all the lights were on and cars were in the parking lot, whatever, so they knew everybody was closing up. Well, then when the male, her date, drove back past there, he noticed that the manager, Jane's car was gone, but all the lights were on, and he thought that was weird. So he stopped to see, like, did they need help with something? Because he was an employee and the front door was locked. He walked around the side and saw the door was open, the back door was open, and he knew that was odd, and he went in and he looked around. He noticed that the safe was open and all the money was gone. Now, keep in mind, it's $500. It's not like it was thousands of dollars. It was
Sure.
$500. But back in '78, that was probably a lot of money to somebody. But
And he was 16, right? Wasn't he super young?
yeah, he was like 16 or 17, at the
Okay.
time, and then, the girls' purses were there and their coats were there, and initially, some of the he ended up calling the police, and the police came, but they didn't come for, like, 30 or 45 minutes, and then they initially said that they thought that the kids had, taken the money and they were off, there was, like, a youth, club across the street that you could get, like, under 21 club. They thought, "Well, maybe they're just over there partying, maybe they went and bought some drugs," but which was just uncharacteristic of any of these kids, like, no drugs were found in any of their systems. So,
Right.
I feel like I said before, I feel like these 2 people cased the place, they came in, they weren't expecting, Mark to be there, and they thought they could just go in and either get the money and take the girls, and overpower Danny, and it just went off the rails, and they had to take them because it's known that most times when there's a robbery or even a killing at a fast food restaurant or a restaurant, that they do it at the restaurant. They don't take the people from the
No, they don't.
location,
Yeah, it doesn't
you
become a
know?
kidnapping and yeah.
Right, well, so these people were taken, but the weird part was is Jane's car, which was like a two-door Vega, which it's if you
I
have to look
saw
that
it
up, it's a very small car. Her car was taken and found abandoned in front of the police station. Like, why? Like, you couldn't have gotten all 4 of them plus
in
a
that
suspect
car.
in a car.
Mhm.
Right, so there had to be something else, but why was her car left in front of the police station? Like, why was her car not taken to where they were found or, somewhere else? Like, not even it's just weird that it was
Well,
again, another
and
reason that this fascinates me.
sure, and a thing I thought was really like, before we get into them being found, because I know that was really eerie too, but can you talk a little bit about what happened with the police? Like, what did they do? Because that was really, like, maddening. Because I feel
So
this is why they couldn't question people as long as they wanted. So when you said, "Oh, they just released this guy," I know why.
So the employee called the cops. Like I said, the police didn't get there for 30 or 45 minutes.
Mm-mm.
And then they thought, okay, the kids stole the money. They don't think of it as a kidnapping or a murder or anything. So they close up the restaurant. They call in the employees for the next morning and they have the employees clean the restaurant and open up business as usual. So I mean, it's '78. There wasn't like a lot of DNA or anything, but if there was blood, if there was hair, if there were fingerprints, that's all gone because they thought these kids were just off having fun. Like they didn't secure the crime scene. They didn't lock it down. They didn't close the restaurant for days. Like they were serving breakfast the next morning at 6:30.
Yeah, it's so sad because then you've lost and washed all evidence away, like any fingerprints, any DNA, any kind of was there a
Right.
scuffle over here?
I mean,
Any
anything
signs of a
like a
struggle were gone.
right. Like they had like the theory was that like Mark was he was cleaning out the grease traps, because those were in the back of the restaurant. So like the suspects wouldn't have seen him until they came upon him, and so the bucket was still there, but now, the bucket's, like, cleaned up. Well, then once they realized that this was actually not kids off joyriding, the police came back and tried to stage a crime scene, which they couldn't because they didn't have pictures, but all of a sudden they were trying to make it. They have pictures that were 2 or 3 days after the fact, so none of those are accurate because nobody remembered where stuff was, basically.
There was something else I had, like, I'm sure the parents were worried, like, where are my kids and why would they, go steal things? And I couldn't find a lot on that because I'll tell you, if my kid, when she was 16, working at a place where all teenagers work, right? The money's gone, the kids are gone, ba, 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 I would be like, wait a minute, you think my kid stole money and just took off and is going to come back being like, Mom, I'm sorry, I stole money. Like, come on.
Yeah.
There's no way all four of these sets of parents were just like, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so the one employee, he came back, it was around 11:45, close to midnight on Friday night, and then the police came, so they did their investigation, and then, basically closed the restaurant. We're just gonna look for the kids. They went to the kids' homes, and the kids were not there, obviously, and then the parents started calling friends. Mark, he was supposed to have walked home with a friend, and let's go back to that. This was 1978. I mean, Speedway was a racist town, and these were 2 Black guys, and so that's the reason they were
Yeah.
going to walk home together because it wasn't really safe for them to walk home alone, and
Uh-huh.
so the one guy he went by the restaurant, it looked weird to him, he thought Mark had left him, so he just walked home, so they called him, he said, "No, this is what happened, blah, blah, blah." They couldn't find any of the kids, and, the one girl, Ruth, like, she was getting ready, she was 30 days from being 18, she wanted to go in the military, she had no, background of, staying out late or even being late for curfew, and it didn't. I think they started sometime Saturday looking for the kids, but they didn't find them until Sunday, so it was, like, 36 hours before they found them, and they found them, like, 25, 30 miles from
Mm-hmm.
the location.
It's so devastating.
And again, we have to keep saying this was 1978. It's not like you had, like, big interstates. They found them in a very rural area that you would have to know where this area is at. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a hunting area. The person that found them was a hunter. He was out hunting and he found them. But the 2 people that I mentioned in the beginning, the suspects, they were very familiar with that area. One of them's father actually had a farm in that area.
I can't wait to talk about that because I couldn't find that much. So, and I was like,
Okay,
Tracie
so
knows.
they are, I mean, if you want me to use names, I'll use names. If you don't want me to use names, I won't use names.
Well, if they're charged legally or if they're, I don't know.
I don't think that they weren't ever charged, but they, like, the several, like I told you, I've watched a couple of shows on, and they're named in all the shows, and they're shown in pictures. So one guy that was like the enforcer,
Mm-hmm.
muscular, works out all the time, has a beard, and then the other guy, he was tall, but he was very slender, very clean cut, and they became known, when the eyewitnesses that also said that they saw them, they said, they
Yeah.
became known as the bearded man and the clean cut guy. There was a Dunkin' Donuts across the street that was open, but, one of the girls that was working there, she was, again, 1978, she was getting off work early, and her boyfriend came to meet her so that they could, drink a beer and smoke some weed, and they needed matches, and so the boyfriend went to the back of the burger chef, and, Danny actually gave him some matches, and they also saw these 2 people that became known as the bearded man and the clean cut man.
Because the scene wasn't preserved and the scene's basically disturbed, the scene can't tell us a story at all.
Right.
Um, so in that case, none of the evidence being intact, that really makes it to where there's just nothing we can go off of. So,
Right, and the evidence not being intact, even if they had someone in custody, there's nothing to test it against, basically, except the victims. There's nothing to tie them to
It
the restaurant. Does that make yeah.
yep.
So I purposely did not watch the video or look into this because I wanted to hear it and be able to ask
Okay.
questions. Right. So the boy who asked the girl out and then she asked Mark to take her place. Is there any thoughts that he's involved?
No, because he was with the girl. The he was a Burger Chef employee as well. I don't know if he worked at that Burger Chef or if he worked at another one, but he had asked her out. They had each other's alibi, and, like, people saw them out all night, and then, when they went past the restaurant and he came back, and then he's the one that called the police, and there was no connection to him that there was no reason why he would,
Mm.
commit this and like, even if he had, like, he couldn't have taken the kids and gotten to where they were found and gotten back by the time the police were called. So, like, he was kinda cleared on that end. It was like a 10-minute window.
No, I don't mean that he was the person who did it. Did he know the people, the eventual suspects, and, like, be like, "Oh, I wanna protect this girl, and so I'm gonna ask her out on a date for that night so that she has to get a replacement."
I don't think that that was ever thought of, like, you asking that, that's the first time I've even thought of it. I think maybe he knew her from school, or maybe he knew her from working with her, and he wanted to ask her out, and he just asked her out. There was some reason they were gonna go out it was a Friday night, so I don't know if there was, like, a football game or a party or, whatever, but she had to get somebody to cover her shift, and that's where Mark came in to cover the shift.
Which is a really good question, kinda my point, like, the stuff she thinks of, I'm like, "Where did you get that?" So, yeah, let's start talking about the 2 days go by, and this is where the story gets really sad.
So, basically, they were found about, 36 hours later, about 20 to 30 miles from the location. Um, there's 4 victims, and there were 3 different modes of killing. So, there was gunshots to 2 of them. One was stabbed, and then one was apparently beaten, and to the point that they say that if this had occurred, like, in the restaurant, the one that was beaten actually would have probably survived because it was a broken nose and they choked on their blood. That's how they died.
Mm,
It's so awful, and what it was
it's
weird to me that all 4 of them were killed in a different way. So it was, like, almost, like, reactive, it seemed like it
So
was a reaction, not and the money was
yes.
on them, wasn't it? Didn't the kids have the money from the restaurant
Well,
in their
so that's
pockets?
so go back. I don't know that the money was found, but the weird part back when I said that, like, Jane's car was taken and then found, her car keys were found in her pocket. 2 of the victims were shot, and then it appears from the way, so they were found together, they were found side by side, and then another victim was found about 75 yards away, and that victim had been stabbed, and then the other victim was found probably 50 to 75 yards from there. And one of the detectives said it looked like that victim had been running and that someone had grabbed them by, like, the back of their collar and pulled them back because, like, their toes were kind of planted in their knee, but they were on their knees, but they were laid back, and that's how they basically drowned in their own blood.
Ugh.
And one theory says that that victim ran into a tree, and that's what caused it, but
Yes.
and
Mm,
then, like, at the funeral, the body was so disfigured that they had to have a closed casket, like, so this person didn't just run into a tree and die, like, things were
mhm.
happening before that, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah. So, 2 days later, the 4 are found, so here's kinda summarizing what you're saying. The 2 days later, the 4 of them are found in the woods in what's Johnson County. They're still wearing their
Correct.
uniforms,
Name tags.
mhm. They're not all killed in the same way. That was very weird to me. Different injuries, different methods, not neat at all. It was almost like I said, something happened and escalated.
Well, the 2 that were shot, there were no shell casings found. I mean, they found
Mhm.
the bullets, obviously, which were a .38 caliber, but they found no shell casings, so, like, if you go back to the theory that it was, like, this, a young kid, like, a kid's not gonna think to take the
Right,
shell casings,
right.
and then, unfortunately, the person that was stabbed, the knife blade broke off, but
Yeah,
the hilt or the handle to the blade was taken, like, it wasn't
yeah.
left there.
Rachel, what questions here? Because this is the first you're hearing about these kids being found.
well, now I'm on the spot. Now I don't have a
That's
question.
okay.
I mean, the only thing I'm thinking is, like, the whole different methods of killing, like, I mean, we've all watched enough crime shows, like, it's always multiple people. So
Oh
do you think there's 3 people?
oh, I don't know. I feel like there's at least 2. I don't know if there's a 3rd because I feel like the 2 that were shot were found literally side by side, and I think maybe the other 2 took off running to try and get
Mhm,
away, not knowing that there was gonna be, another means for them to die, and, like, why if they're running, why weren't they shot? Not that that makes it better, but, like, why not just keep the same means, you know?
Mm,
You have a gun, like,
mhm.
why not just shoot the person instead of doing these other things to them?
I I think that if there's more than 2 people, I mean, that's how these kids cooperate. Like, if there's
Oh,
one
yeah,
person, you
yeah.
got 4 kids, I mean, even 16 and scrawny, I think you can overtake someone. There's 4 of you and 1 of them kinda thing, but if there's
Yeah.
2,
Yeah, that's
that's
kinda
where
what
it
they
gets a little more.
mentioned and why these kids would've left the restaurant with anybody is it must have been more than one person who had a gun and said, "We're going." Like, put them into fear to where they felt they needed to leave.
Well, there is a theory back to the restaurant that the kids were put into a van. It's an orange van. People describe this orange van. The one guy describes being, in the orange van with the 2 suspects and the girlfriend the next day, but there's no proof that either one of those suspects owned an orange van, and an orange van was never found. So that's kinda
Yeah.
where it goes off the rails too, where it's like, okay, that doesn't make sense. And even, like, you had to, like, her Jane's car being left in town and her keys in her pocket, so that car wasn't taken to the crime scene
That
because you would have
almost
to have her.
sounds like yeah, that almost sounds like she drove the car there, because it's just natural, you take the keys out of the ignition and you stick them in your pocket.
Right, but her
You know
car's
what I
found in
mean?
town, so, like,
I
she
No, I
didn't
know,
drive her
that's what
car
I mean.
back. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
there's a suspect in the car with her,
yeah,
and there's a suspect in the van with the other 3, and maybe they're just telling her, "You do what we're telling you to do,
Yeah,
so we're gonna drive and drop your car off somewhere," and you just naturally get out of the car and stick your
put
keys
your
in your pocket.
mhm.
yeah, but think
Yeah.
about that too, if they had another vehicle, why move her car? Like, why do you need to move
So
her
that
car? Her car.
so that the restaurant looks closed. No cars in the
But
parking
they
lot.
but they but they left all the lights on.
I didn't say they were smart criminals.
But if you go back to that theory, so the one guy, when him and his date drove past there, they saw her car in the parking lot, so they knew that they were closing up. But then when he came back and her car was gone and all the lights were on, that's what made him stop because he knew if her car was gone, the lights should have been off. So he knew something wasn't right.
There was also a mess with how the police worked on the scene where the kids were found. So her keys were accidentally brought home by an officer. Like he brought them home on accident. He didn't put them in evidence bags. He didn't. It was a very, yeah, I know, Rachel. I know. But it's very
1978, Rachel, 1978.
really bad. Like solo cup level bad. Like this was really
Mhm.
bad. And they didn't do a very good job of keeping up with the evidence and writing things out the right way. It was very poorly done, and they admitted that. There was no, "Oh, there's an excuse for this." They did say, "We didn't do a very good job. We let the evidence get
Well,
away."
even so the one, the doc I told you to go watch, when they talk to Ruth's sister has Ruth's glasses, she has her name tag, Jane's boyfriend has her name tag that she was wearing that night, like, why is this not still in evidence if no one's been charged? Like, why would you
Right.
release all this stuff?
Yeah. So let's start talking about a few of the theories. There's a lot of rumors.
Mhm.
The first is the robbery because money's missing and the safe's open, but it doesn't the violence ad is not obviously simple robbery. Um, why take the 4 people?
Right.
Um,
Well, there had been robberies in the area, so there'd been a group of, like, 5 guys that had been robbing the Burger Chef and other locations in the area. They'd even robbed a Dunkin' Donuts. So, like, that was the first theory that it was robbery, but in the other cases, they had never taken anybody from the location, and they had obviously never murdered anybody. It was just a a robbery group that was going around
that were just
robbing
robbing
things.
places.
Right. But so if you're talking theories on that one of them was that Jane knew one of the guys in the robbery group, and they thought maybe he was one of the ones that came in to rob the Burger Chef, but that doesn't make any sense to me because she was the manager, she was the night manager, and if you were casing the place enough that you were gonna rob it, you wouldn't rob it on a night that she was working, you would rob it on a night that she wasn't working because you would know that she would
Mhm.
recognize you.
Right. Yeah, that does not make a whole lot of sense.
Well, let's talk about the other theories. So we got this robbery theory, and the drug dealer trying to collect theory. What are some of the other theories?
Well, back to the drug theory, they said that, like, her brother was a known drug dealer. They didn't have they one person said that they felt like Jane was probably getting sucked into that world, but, again, I say this again, 1978, and they're saying, that she owed $15,000 to a drug dealer. That seems like a lot, like, that's like cartel kinda money back in
Mhm.
1978 for a
Mm.
20-year-old to owe to a drug dealer, and you go to a a fast food restaurant to collect the money and you take $500? Like, that just doesn't that doesn't add up to me, but, I mean, it could totally be legit, it just doesn't add up to me that that's, you know, um, how you would go about getting the money. And then I know, Krystal, I'll let you talk about the guy that does the confessing, that thing, but there's also another theory about a Speedway bomber. So, 6 days, there was a 6-day bombing spree in, Speedway, um, in September of 1978. One was actually across from the Burger King, and Ruth was working that night at the Burger Chef. So Mark, one of the victims, also lived in an apartment complex where a cop car was blown up. There was a gym bag at one of the high schools that was left in the parking lot, and it blew up, and a dad had, like, kicked the gym bag, and it blew up, and he lost his leg, and I can't remember if it was Danny or Jane went to that school. One of them went to that school. So there was bombings at all in the area. But they linked those to a guy named, Brent that was, he was, again, he was in the drug trade, so they kind of linked that back to him. Now, he was supposed to go to court, and he killed his girlfriend's mom, and then the dad died before he could testify against him, so there were never any charges brought against him.
So
Sorry.
incredibly crazy that that didn't even it's almost like every turn, this just fell apart. Like, it's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
well, we kinda started moving, and this guy was, like, a real promising," but then everybody disappeared and, evaporated into thin air, and, I mean, it
yeah.
feels that way.
I feel like the bomber
Well,
thing, I don't know, like, there was no bomb involved in this, there was no, like, even in the bombings, there weren't any robberies, that wasn't, and no one was really hurt except for the man, obviously, but that I don't know that it was an intentional, like, I think it was probably just to scare people. So that one, I feel like, in my mind, of the theories, I feel like that's the worst one, is the bombing theory.
that's the least plausible one in your mind.
Yeah, I mean,
So, which one do
again,
you
it's a
go with?
small
Which theory do you
I
lean towards? Because I just looked up how much $15,000 in 1978 versus today, and it's like $75,000 today.
for a
So,
20-year-old girl. Yeah.
for a 20-year-old to owe that much in the I mean, maybe 1,500 seems more, like, reasonable to owe for that time frame?
Yeah. And
Hmm.
then, so the second theory, Crystal, that's the one you wanted to talk about with the guy making the confession. But, like, for me, Rachel, I go back to, it's these 2 guys that I mentioned earlier that, the one's girlfriend disappears and is found 7 months later, and then he disappears and he hasn't been heard or seen from in 46 plus years. But the other guy, is in prison but won't answer any questions and just kinda laughs every time somebody approaches him about it. I go back to those 2 guys
Mm.
did this. Now, why they did it, I don't know, but that's who I go back to.
Yeah, and honestly, that one makes more sense. I mean, I believe so. Donald Forster, Wayne Ray, however you want to. Apparently, he had a few alias names that people called him, but he was in prison at the time that he confessed in Indiana, and he was in as a convicted rapist. He decides to insert himself in this. He's like, "Hey, if you move me from the prison I'm at to a less violent prison," so he
Right.
reaches out to the Marion County Sheriff's Department to talk to Mel Wilsey, who's the detective there. And he tells him, "Hey, if you move me to transfer me to a less violent prison, I'll tell you
Mhm.
what happened." And
Right.
so they take him out to let him confess. And he claims personal involvement, including that he shot the two, Davis and Shelton. He claims that he's the one that did that.
Correct.
Then he he gives insider details, though. This was the part that I'm like, he definitely had to have been involved unless someone confessed to him, like, Tracie, the 2 people you think, like, unless they told him and he, like, they took him there or something, but he gives he led the police to the site. He described the positions of the bodies with extreme accuracy. He also knew about the broken knife and that it had been he said it got thrown into the river or the water.
Mhm.
And then his why was very aligned with what speculation already was, that it was because of Jane's brother and the drug debt.
Right.
But his he told the police that he disposed of the gun. He also his ex-wife. Okay, this was the part too that I really believe, because when you mentioned the bullets missing, his ex-wife says that they went up there and to this spot. She remembers driving out to the spot. He gets out of the car and walks into the woods to retrieve shell casings, and that he flushed them down the toilet. So she knew that they ended up pulling a warrant to search the septic tank for those shell casings.
Right.
I feel that it was just so accurate, and with the ex-wife being able to corroborate a lot of it, that felt really right to me, but he was not giving up other people.
So, but the thing is so if we go back to, we feel like there's more than one person just because of the way that the kids are killed. I feel like maybe Forrester was there or he knew
Mhm.
about something. The reasons that I have doubts about him is when they brought him into the station to question him, they showed him all the crime scene photos. Like they showed
Yeah, they
them
left that
like
part out.
yeah, they had like obviously not from the restaurant because there wasn't anything, but they showed him the photos of the them being found at the location. Yes, he and his, ex-wife did go to the location, which is odd that you would know this, where the location is, and they collected shell casings. They did get a warrant, they did search his septic tank, but the shell casings were a .22 and the kids were killed with a .38, so the shell casings don't match.
We're not even the right ones.
Right, they're not even the right ones. He just I feel like you, like he knows too many details that either A, he was there, or B, he knows the people that were there and that's been talked about, but the collecting of the shell casings and the not being the same shell casings, again, this was a hunting area, and so you coulda just known that people go out there and shoot or something, but how do you pick up the wrong casings if you're going to cover up something?
Yeah, and the important thing is, like, so he confessed, right? He tells that he did this, but later
Twice.
he recants it and takes it back,
Twice.
right? So we'll do a little legalese here. So he is with they couldn't find anything to directly connect him, no evidence, even though what he claimed was that he was coerced into saying all that, which means he was bullied, pushed. If you go back and watch Rachel and my history of interrogation, basically well, especially what you're telling me, Tracy, because I didn't know they showed him pictures. Yeah, of course he was able to point exactly where because he's already seen the pictures. So that makes sense to me. But like I said, with what you were saying, it makes me think someone told him everything that was happening. And I never knew the resolution of the septic tank. So I am glad you mentioned that part.
And I mean, even if the crime scene had been handled correctly, I mean, 40 plus years later, a lot of the, unfortunately, a lot of the people involved are deceased or, may have dementia or something. So they can't recall things. So they did say like his confession that he confessed twice. He had some details, which they still don't know if they believe like that he said that the kids were held back by the back area and that they were bound. None of the kids had, wounds indicating that they were bound in any way. So that kind of threw it off. He said that they were armed with a 38, a 45, and a knife. The 38 was the murder weapon, but the casings that were picked up and found in his septic were a .22. So that doesn't align with. Wouldn't you remember the type of gun you had when
Right.
you committed this
Right.
horrific crime? Yeah.
It's so confusing. It is really very baffling.
Mm. I
But
mean,
they messed up so badly. Of course, no matter, even if the two guys that you are convinced did this came up and said, "Yeah, we did it. We did it." They have no
well,
way of connecting them to it. They have
Well,
nothing.
like, he even said that this Forrester said that he didn't shoot anybody. He said that he stabbed someone, and he says he stabbed someone once, but the person was stabbed twice. So, like, that threw that off a little
Mhm.
bit too. But again, the fact that they had the pictures out when he came in, I mean, you or I or Rachel could look at a picture and be like, "Well, this is where they were laying," or "This was this," or "This was that."
Yeah, that looks familiar.
But
That looks familiar.
right, right.
What are you thinking, Rachel? I watch your wheels turn.
It's a crazy case. I mean, dang. And it's a cold case still. Like, this goes back
Mhm.
to, the other case we were talking about, like the small towns and the cold
Mhm.
cases and how it just sits with the town for years and years, and you wonder why people aren't saying anything. You would think somebody knows something. Like, especially if it's the drug theory,
Right.
that's sending a message, but then all goes quiet afterwards and no one talks. Like, I feel like that's I don't
And
know.
this one has a
Hard
little
Well,
piece of
yeah,
everything in it because you've got they were kidnapped, they were taken away, they were missing for days, the evidence was cleaned up. But when you just said, Rachel, the drug thing, that reminds me of our first case that we put out, Turner.
right.
that one's still cold, but when you get if there is this is a deeper drug ring than just like a little like, "Hey, you owe me money for marijuana," like, no one's gonna when you get to if there really was $15,000, no one's talking. Like, that's not going to happen. Nobody's
Right.
talking. That is a silent, sealed up that's why Turner is still not released, even though everyone has their, like, that those group did it, we know who did it." I mean, Samantha Turner's parents are like, "We know who did it. We know who did it." But can't do anything about it because there's no evidence, there's no proof, there's nothing to tie them to it, they can't really go get them. This might be that same idea, like that
Right.
same thread is that, well, you can't go get them because no one's talking, there is no evidence. We went and, like, had employees deep clean the place before we decided to call it a crime scene, so there's nothing except for what was found on the children. So and
Right.
even that, they were taking the keys home with them at night. The police were just not equipped for this. It was a small town, they didn't expect these kinds of things, and that's a horrifying thing.
Well, even the fact that the kids were found outside.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But
they
you
were
would think
outside in the
someone would
woods,
talk.
in the elements. So there is one person again, you need to go watch that doc I told you. So there is one person, and he's the one that says that he saw, the 2 guys with the van, saw them loading the van. Then he's the one that says that he, confronted them the next day, and the one guy's girlfriend was in there. They went riding around. They were gonna go smoke weed and, get high. The girl told him to take off running. He takes off running. He hears a gunshot, and then, like, she's never seen or heard from again 7 months later, and then her boyfriend disappears. He says he was threatened by, the big muscle guy that he should keep his mouth shut or the same thing would happen to him, so he never really talked. They did give him, I know at least 1, if not 2, lie detector tests, and he failed them miserably, like, miserably.
What would be the point as a and I mean, we're seeing this in Guthrie. People just saying they saw things and, like, putting things out to be relevant. I just don't understand saying as a witness that you didn't really see anything. How I just it's heart-wrenching to me. Like, why even go through all the trouble of throwing
Well, I
everyone
mean,
off?
think about it. Like, I mean, again, this at the time, he was, like, 17, 18 years old. Like, he just wanted to be in
Part of the
I
story.
think I mean, I think he just wanted to be relevant to the story, like, because it's all over the news. It was one of the first cases that kinda made not national, but, like, statewide news, and, I mean, he's young, he's wanting to be cool, and I d I'm not saying I don't everything that I've seen about him, I don't think he had anything to do with it. I do think he has, maybe colored it up some, and it's kinda made people go in different directions. If he had just kinda stayed out of it, maybe they would have been able to solve this a little bit sooner. But I don't think it was intentional, like, I don't think he meant.
Not ill will. Yeah, I get
Right,
it.
right,
I'll
right.
I'll take I'll take it back then. I'll take it back. But it just is so well, and this is a bit of Rachel, remember we talked about, in Nebraska, people when it's been this long, you start to kinda embellish the memory. You start kinda
Right,
being like,
right.
"And he was 8 foot tall, and he was 200 pounds," and, like, he was like a linebacker. Like, you just start remembering things as more terrifying or more you start embellishing a bit unintentionally because they become tall tales. Like when a small town holds on to a memory for this long and everyone's trying to piece it together, you start to lose what's real and what's not.
Well, I mean, like, even, in that thing, so they talked to to Jane's boyfriend, and they had hung out that day before she went to work. He said that she was fine, she was upbeat, she was in a good mood, she was a little more snuggly than normal, so he's like, I don't know if she knew something was gonna happen, which, again, that's total speculation. Maybe she was just
Yeah.
snuggly that day, and he said he called the restaurant later, and, she just said, "Oh, it's dead in here." He said, and that's, just eerie that she would use that verbiage, but did she really say that, or,
Yeah.
you don't know, and it's, like you said, I feel like people kinda maybe just wanna know what happened, so they kinda make up theories in their head, and sometimes the theory gets convoluted into, "This is what happened." And, I mean, think
Right.
about it, a small town like this, I mean, you can't go anywhere without thinking, "Well, did Rachel do it? Did Krystal do it? Did, were they there? Do they know somebody that did it?" Like, in the store, "Was it that guy?" It's yeah. So I'm sure there's a lot of fear still around it, but
It's kind of scary too because I think if something happened in an area where I'm close enough to know about it, I'm going to be all up in it. Like I'm going to want to know. Like, well, hang on, what did he say? What did he say? What did he say? So it would be like, well, I think Crystal did it because she seems to have a lot of questions, like little Polly Pocket with her notebook, wanting to know every little detail. But I mean, especially if it was someone they cared about, I could see someone just being so deeply involved that people start to speculate your involvement.
yeah. Yeah.
What I knew was very high level, so just trying to get with how much you know, Tracy, just how much you've found out and know. How long have you been following this one in particular?
I'm one of those people, like I said from the beginning, I like a good whodunit, but I'll go down a rabbit hole. Like, I'm really bad when I'm watching a show, any kind of show, and they mention something, and I'm like, "Oh, is that" like, even if it's not a true show, I'm like, "Oh,
Mhm.
did that really happen?" So it might take me you might watch something that takes you an hour, it might take me, like, 4 days because 'cause I'll go down a rabbit hole, "Oh, did you know this? Did you know this? Did you know this?" And this one, it just I actually saw it, like I said, and I wanna say within the last 6 months, I saw it on,
Mm,
like, either Dateline or 2020 or Evil Lives Here or one of those, like, little one-hour shows, and I
yeah,
thought, "Okay, there's more to this, like, there's just more to this than that." And so I just started going down rabbit holes, it's like
that's
yeah.
definitely me too. I feel like I have gotten into some of those where, and I do those rabbit holes where I'm on now like the dark side of Reddit and 4chan and like seeing who's posting things. Like I really, with Idaho 4, I did that. Like that
Mhm.
case rocked me. And I know things about like the Snapchats that morning from the kids and stuff, like things that most people don't know about because I start going through Reddit threads of what locals are saying and what the like their own little chat of what is
Right.
happening. And I feel like that's where you went with this one, that it grabbed you and took you in. And yeah, I appreciate how much knowledge you have on it because that is the game I play. I get really caught up. I'm now looking into Norway investigation stuff because of the rabbit holes that Rachel has thrown me down in Norway. Yeah, this was a really good case. There's just so much happening here. It's got everything, and that's so scary.
Yeah, and again, you go back to it's not solved. So these people, these persons are either they are still out there or they got away with this, and you go back to like these other cases where there's DNA on file and like they trace the ancestry to the second cousin of the, twice removed cat at this point because they can
Yeah.
do that with DNA. Like they don't have anything. Like there was nothing in the restaurant because it was washed away. These kids were left outside in the woods. Were they killed that night? Were they, which obviously it sounds like they were because their clothes, they still had on their clothes. There was no sexual assault of anyone, so they've laid out there for 36 hours in the elements. And so anything that was on them is gone at this point too. Go back to the car. Where's Jane's car? Did anybody test her car? Was the seat in the right position? Were there fingerprints on no, they give the car back to the family.
I think of this like an octopus. Like there's the problem in the middle, and then you have 8 arms of where everything could go. Like why did the car look like that? Why would they clean the restaurant? How come it took this long? Why did we not call the kids missing quicker? Like all the little like. So of those things, I only could get so far, and I feel like you pulled the tentacles out further for me. Like now I know a little bit more, but they
Mhm.
still go into a dead end long before they're
Right.
supposed to. So
Right.
I did I did have to go look at this, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. So there's no solid public evidence that the victims were found with the money on them, but there are speculations that about $581 was missing. Coin money was left, about $100
Yep.
in coins, but the victims that were found had money and watches still on them. Maybe, I don't know the amount of money that was on them, but they were not robbed. So no one took anything off of them. And to me, if they're still found with all of their valuables, why
I would be
would you?
curious when you're saying that money was found with them, I would be curious to know, like, what amount of money was found on them and where it was found. Because keep in mind, the girls' purses were still at the restaurants. Most back in that day, girls kept their money in a wallet in their
In
purse.
their
So
wallets, right.
right, so the boys had the money. So how much money did they have? They're
Yeah.
16 years old. I mean, they don't have $500 walking around. And then why were the coins not taken? Why was it only the cash? Like, the coins were left in the safe. Truly coming to rob for money, that's $100 in coins right there. That's why are you gonna leave that?
Yeah, yeah, so if it's truly about the money, that's why it almost seems kind of that why when Rachel said, "Were we sure this was about that?" Because why was the money not taken then? If you were really looking for money, there was plenty of out go strip her car down and sell it for parts. Like, if you need money, there's a lot of ways they could have gotten money out of this situation. They could have taken a lot more because they had.
Yeah, and if you're making her take her car, like Rachel said, they've got a gun to her, they put her in the driver's seat, they make her take her car, and she gets out of the car with her car keys and she gets into this other vehicle. Why do you take your car and park it in front of the police station? There's gotta be 1,000 places, obviously not at the crime scene, there's gotta be 1,000 places you could have parked that car instead of,
Mhm. The
at a
police
park
station.
in front of the police station.
Weird. Yeah. I have no idea why that would be a good idea at all.
Right,
I
right.
cannot find an idea of why that would be smart.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
the car never made it to the crime scene because it wouldn't have made it back to the police station because the keys are in her pocket.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't know. This one was weird.
This is a
Yeah,
weird story.
Rachel's stare.
I agree. Oh,
Rachel's stare
I
is
got
like
this. I'm like, well, I know what I'm watching tonight. It's not Double Jeopardy. It's
yeah, like I said, I get, like, if I'm reading a book and, like, they mention something, I'm like, "Oh, did that really happen?" And then, like, I'll go, like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that," and it's like the Ed Gein, like, Rachel knows that I'm obsessed with Ted Bundy, which is weird, but, like, the Ed Gein thing has always fascinated me too, and when I watched the series, they mentioned stuff, I'm like, "Oh gosh, I didn't know that," like, the one guy that played Tony Perkins that played, in, um what you call it? The Alfred Hitchcock
Bates
I didn't know
Motel.
yeah,
Mhm.
Nates, yeah, I didn't know that he was gay in real life. I didn't know that, like,
I didn't either.
his wife was on one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center, like, see?
Yeah.
I went down holes because they
Yep.
mentioned the name, so then I Googled the name, how did this person and da 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 da. Yeah, so it was yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
this was the
it
same thing. I'm like, "Okay, this is something's we're gonna roll with this."
I definitely appreciate that about you too, is like I am the same way. I start digging and digging and digging and digging. And I guess I am not capitalizing on my resources here because a lot of times I know a little too much about a case or I've been going too far down a line. So I'm gonna have to start sending y'all my little findings of different people who are saying things that but it's interesting that you're that style too. I know Rachel's always doing that. She's always giving me information like, "Where did you see that? I watched the same thing you did. How did you get that?" So,
But you have to I mean,
um
we could all read the same book, we could read the same article, we could watch the same show, and we're all gonna walk away with something different. I mean, that's just the
yeah,
things that you cue in on, like, that you see something your mind thinks of it this way and hers that way and mine this way, like, it's all a different,
a
perspective of it,
life
so
experience and like what case that reminds us of that we went deep into. Yeah, easily.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tracy, for joining us as our first guest
Well,
coworker.
it's like you said in the little thing that you sent, like, at the end of the day, these are 4
Mhm.
kids who are gone
Mhm.
and who never, never had a chance to have a life that, basically probably their murderers did, and someone knows something. Someone knows something. What's the fear now that you're not talking?
Right, it's
What
50 years later. Somebody
Yeah,
somebody can
yeah,
talk now. Like, there
right,
can't be that much fear. Like, if you
right.
were 20 at the time that you did this crime or heard about, like, people are 70 now. Either maybe they're not with us, maybe they're in a nursing home, maybe they're in, assisted living, whatever, but, like, what's the fear that holds people back from telling what they know?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I agree with Rachel. Having you as our first guest, we learned a lot. I think we are learning how to put things, how to warn people ahead of time of how it's going to be and what equipment. I mean, you don't really need equipment, but just how to prepare. So, thank you for being our first guest, and hopefully, it wasn't too stressful for you.
No, I just felt like I was just talking randomly.
No, we were looking at the best way to keep this case moving through in a way that that captures it all because I do think the due diligence on it is important.
Yeah, yeah.
Okie doke. Rachel, want to close with me?
So who took the employees from the Burger Chef parking lot? Was it a robbery that spiraled out of control or something far more deliberate? Did someone know more than they ever admitted? And how did a crime this brutal fade into the background of history? The Burger Chef case is a reminder of how fragile justice can be. Evidence was lost, leads went cold, and as years passed, the windows for answers slowly closed.
More than 40 years later, the questions remain unanswered. And until they're resolved, the Burger Chef murders stand as one of Indiana's most haunting unsolved cases. Not just a story of who committed the crime, but about what happens when time, fear, and uncertainty outweighs the truth. Some cases don't fade because they're solved, they fade because they're forgotten.
Before we go, we want to thank Tracy for joining us on this episode, for sharing her insight and research on a case that still deserves attention. And we hope that we were able to bring just a little bit more light to this case.
Until next time, coworkers.
See you later, coworkers.
that wraps up this week's episode.
Thanks for listening, whether you're at your office, at your home, or somewhere in between. We're glad you're here.
Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Like what you heard? Leave us a review and share it with your coworkers.
Got a case you want us to cover or office drama that feels criminal? Send it to us at coworkers.crimepodcast@gmail.com or check the episode notes for all of our social handles. Until next time, coworkers.
Stay curious, stay safe, and stay caffeinated.